Hey guys, alright, so I'm going to go over the lab You've Got Potential a little bit with you because it can be a little confusing how this is set up. So let's start with the intro. How can the amount of potential energy change for an object? Well, different factors affect different types of energy differently. If an object has to work hard to get to its location, then it has more potential energy stored up in it. If it's hard to change the object, it has more potential energy stored up in it. So think about this. If you have to lift a rock up off the ground, just a little bit, maybe not too hard, but now imagine lifting it up over your head. So if you've had to lift it all the way up over your head, you put a lot of work into that. And the more work that you've put into it, the more potential it now has to do other kind of work, like fall. So a hint to help you when you're thinking about this, think about if it was hard or easy to get the object to that location or in that situation in the lab. The harder it was to get to that point, the more energy it has stored up. So let's take a look at this gravitational potential energy here. So you'll notice there are two things. You'll see an IV and a dV. So we talked a lot about this at the beginning of the year. The IV is what you change, and there's a question underneath that to help you. The dV is what kind of observations or data did you observe or collect that could indicate the amount of energy present. So we're not going to actually measure the amount of potential energy, but we're going to look for things that can help show us if there was potential energy a certain amount or not, and compare it to a different IV level. So we talked about levels earlier this year, and in this case our IV is height and distance, so our level is going to be the different ways that we change our height and distance. So for this example, you're going to be working on that sandbox, and you're going to be dropping different weights inside of it. So maybe you're going to drop from 1 meter, and your other distance is going to be 2 meters. So the evidence for the amount of potential energy. In this particular case, you're going to either look at the diameter or the depth of the impact in the sand. So let's just make up some data here. Let's say this is 5 centimeters and this is 10 centimeters. Now, each station is going to look a little different, but it's a way for you to practice working with the IV and the dV. When you're finished with each little station, it asks you some sort of question down here. This one is, what's the relationship between height and the amount of gravitational potential energy? So sort of a summarization. Before you kind of come to this point though, each lab station has a paper in a laminate kind of pocket, and it has directions for you as well as some discussion questions. You don't have to write your answers for the discussion questions, but you do need to discuss those with your lab partner so that you can get some kind of thoughts going about what you were doing with each activity or lab. Then you'll come here and summarize, and you'll go through all the different types of potential energy. So you'll see gravitational has height and distance as well as mass. Then we have elastic potential, electrical, chemical, and magnetic. And they all have something to do with an IV and a dV. So think about what you're changing, what you measure, and then using those summary questions at the end, kind of pull all the information together from those discussions you did, as well as the different activities and the data that you've collected. So take your time and really think about how you can impact the amount of potential energy and how the potential energy can be used and transferred to other kinds of energy. So see me for help if you need it, but otherwise use both the tools at the lab stations as well as the lab information right here in your notebooks.